Hey, Nora, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Well, there are various threads in my life. I guess first and foremost, I'm a writer. I write fiction, and I have basically all my life. I'm also the editor of an online literary journal called JewishFiction.net, which publishes Jewish fiction that was either written in English or translated into English from 20 languages. So it's truly a multilingual, multicultural journal, although it's all, you only read in English. Of course, it's all in English. I've been a social worker, a therapist, a social work professor, and an activist. I've also founded a number of organizations on social justice topics that I care about. I guess that's it in a nutshell.
Love that. I would love if you could tell us what your books are about.
Well, they're all about different things, though I guess there are certain threads that unite them. My first book, Marrow and Other Stories, which won a Canadian Jewish Book Award and praise from Alice Munro, which of course was a great honor, was about the lives of women and girls juggling their feelings, their needs, their wants with the world around them and the limitations that were put on them. My first novel, which was my second book, Fields of Exile, which won a different Jewish literary award, was a novel about anti-Semitism on university campuses. It's the first novel on that topic, and how a very idealistic young woman tries to cope with that. Then my novel, The Dead Man, my third book, was about a middle-aged woman, not a young woman for once, who falls in love and with a man who's actually very disturbed. And after the breakup, takes a very long time to recover. So this is about her process, and she's a composer of music. So there's a lot of music in this novel. My book, 18 Jewish Stories Translated from 18 Languages, isn't written by me. It's translated from 18 languages by different people, of course. And it's a very exciting book. It's the first book of its kind in 25 years, which showcases Jewish fiction from around the world. And then there's my novel, March 1st, 2024, which is two novellas in one book. The two novellas are called In Sickness and in Health and Yom Kippur in a Gym. And the first one is about a woman who, as a child, had epilepsy and is very ashamed of that and goes to great lengths to hide it from everybody around her, including her husband, and the fallout from that secretiveness. The second one is about a group of Jewish people celebrating their religious holiday together in a gym. Sometimes there are Jewish services that take place in a gym. And something happens that throws them all together and helps them with their problems. Each one was struggling with a great crisis in their life, and something occurs that helps them all in different ways. So I guess they're all different, but as you can hear, there are themes that run through them about the inner life and the outer world and how these two things collide, sometimes work well together, sometimes don't work well together, and a particular focus on women, I would say.
Love that. What inspired you to write your books?
Well, I won't go through all 5 of them. And actually, I have another book coming out in 2026, another novella called Doubles. Speaking about the most recent ones, I guess with 18, it was very interesting. These were all stories that I had already published in jewishfiction.net in my journal. And we have readers in 140 countries, and people kept saying, you have to publish these, some of the stories. You have to make a book out of the best of jewishfiction.net. And I was resistant because I'm a writer, and anything that you do as you would know, any new project is stealing from your writing time. And I kept thinking, no, no, no. And then I realized from listening to my readers that they basically didn't know that there was Jewish fiction written in other languages other than Hebrew or Yiddish or whatever, maybe Ladino. Um, when most people hear the phrase Jewish fiction, they think of American Jewish fiction written in English. They don't think about Canadian fiction. I'm Canadian or British or whatever. And they certainly don't really think about Italian, Greek, Albanian, Spanish. So I began to feel it was actually important. I was on a bit of a mission to get this out there. And so that's a very exciting book with its own kind of push and agenda, I guess. For Sickness and in Health, in Sickness and in Health and Yom Kippur and a Gym, I've always been very interested in sickness and in health, both physical and mental. I mentioned I was a therapist, and so that whole field is close to me. Um, I'm also interested in marriages and secrets and lies and family games. And so the novella Sickness and in Health just really grew out of me very organically, I think. For Yom Kippur in a Gym, it was a bit different because I attended services in a gym for many years. It's a kind of overflow service when your synagogue doesn't have enough room. So on the high holidays, when so many more people come, you pack them into a gym. And most of these people I didn't know. And I spent, you're in synagogue for 3 full days during the high holidays, just looking across the aisle at faces of people I didn't know and wondering what was really going on inside them while they were doing all these prayers. What were they praying for? What did they want in their lives? What were they worried about and scared about? And who were they, And so that also developed organically. When my mind would wander from the prayers, I would look at someone and make up a story or think, she looks sad. Why is she sad? He looks anxious. What's he so anxious about? And all that. So I think the story came together because of circumstance in a way.
Love that. When you were writing your book, who were you thinking of when it comes to who the book is for?
Oh, that's a great question, Courtney. I don't really think about audience when I'm writing. I think the few times I have tried to think about audience, not necessarily in terms of marketing, but sort of an ideal reader or who would understand me, it doesn't really work. At least for me. Everybody's different, but for me, it kind of stops me from writing, thinking too much about audience. Um, I would say my books really are for anybody who loves stories, great stories about people, their lives, their loves, their pains, struggles, problems, solutions, adventures. Um, and even though the stories in 18, for example, to refer to just the 2 most recent books, and Yom Kippur and a Gym have some Jewish content, none of my books are written just for Jewish readers. And the same way you would enjoy a book that's originally written in French or Ukrainian or Spanish. It's not a barrier. These books can be enjoyed and loved by everyone.
Love that. How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
Mhm. Well, I think I started writing before I could actually write, as in holding a pen. I remember, I remember, but also my family tells me about this, that we used to have these things called story records. I don't think they have them anymore, but I know they don't have them anymore, but I guess there are CDs for children and stuff like that now. And we would play, someone would play the record for me. When I was 3 or 4 years old, I'd be sitting on the living room carpet listening to the gramophone. That dates me. And when it was over, I would keep telling the story. If it ended with the girl on a mountain, with his dog, I would continue the story. And I would just sit there and either tell it out loud or make it up in my head. And I've always done that. I can't remember ever not doing that, um, which is, of course, really different from holding a pen in your hand and putting it on paper in one way. In another way, it's not any different. It's really about the flow of your mind through the imaginative cycle. And back then, of course, I didn't edit, which makes it in some ways just the sheer pleasure of writing. But yeah, I can't remember ever not writing insofar as writing means making up stories.
It's amazing. What is your schedule like when you are writing a book?
Well, I'm an early riser. Um, I usually am up by about 6. Right now, last week I returned from a trip overseas, so I'm jet lagged and I'm up at 3 a.m. every day, which is kind of weird. But usually I'm up around 6. I just check my email to make sure there's nothing urgent, and then I get to writing. Um, Mornings are my best time, so I try to give my best time to my writing, not do all the other junk and then give the leftover to my writing. But of course, life being what it is, as you know, sometimes, um, you know, something interferes. But that's my schedule, basically, morning time.
Love that. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
Well, I need complete solitude. I need silence. I know not only I know in theory about people, I know all sorts of people who can write in a cafe. The music is blaring at home, whatever. Everyone needs something different. For me, I need silence, and even the slightest noise is an interruption for me. Um, I can put up with a dog barking, but if there's a kid playing in the backyard, bouncing his ball rhythmically for 45 minutes, I can't do anything. So, but I'm lucky. I have a space to work in where I'm not usually interrupted, and I can do my work.
Amazing. What is your favorite writing snack or drink?
Oh, well, I like to be hydrated. I drink a lot. I'll stand up and take a stretch, which is good for your health and the writing, I think. Just to take a break is very important. And I'll drink. Um, I tend to suck candies when I'm writing. I don't really eat. I'm not a nonstop eater. Some people just eat all the time. I guess after about an hour and a half, I usually get up and have a piece of fruit or some crackers or something. I don't really eat lunch in the middle of writing. I stop for lunch later, like 1:30 or whatever. Um, yeah, not liquor. I don't write when I'm drunk, really. That's not really my thing.
Love it. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
Well, I'm not narrow. It's not that I never read anything but fiction. I enjoy memoir. I enjoy nonfiction, but I love fiction. Fiction's my world. Um, Lately, I especially read novellas, and I don't know if that's why I'm writing novellas because um, my first book was a novella and a bunch of stories, and In Sickness and in Health and Yom Kippur and Jim are novellas, and the book I have coming out in 2026, Doubles, is a novella. So I seem to be on a novella's roll, and I don't know if I love reading them because I'm writing them or I'm writing them because I love reading them. There's something there. Um, I just read a wonderful novella, which was a new translation of a Thomas Mann novella called Chaotic World and Childhood Sorrow, translated by Damien Searles. And it was amazing. It just blew my mind. And novellas are me right now. Um, I also love short stories. Um, I would say at the moment I'm reading few novels for whatever reason. I know that COVID affected a lot of people this way. I don't know if it's attention span. And that's not to say that there aren't amazing novels to be read, but right now I tend to read novellas and some short stories.
Love that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
I can't really say that anybody inspired me to be a writer. Um, I mean, the same way that those story records, quote, inspired me, to continue the story and to write. Anyone I read and liked made me want to kind of answer them by giving them a story of my own. I don't remember ever wanting to imitate anybody or please anybody. I can't point. I mean, if I think about who I liked reading, say when I was a teenager, I remember really liking Alice Munro. I'm Canadian, so she was a local hero that no one outside of Canada back then had heard of, unlike now. Um, I loved Dostoevsky, and I loved A.B. Yoshua, who's an Israeli writer. And that's interesting, actually, because Dostoevsky and Yoshua were both, I read them both in translation, of course. I don't speak Russian. Um, but it wouldn't be accurate to say that either of them inspired me to be a writer. The way I think about it really was I was just a born writer, actually.
Love that. What books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
Ah, well, I read a lot. I come from a family that of readers. My parents were both big readers, and my brothers and I would get trotted off to the library every single week. We'd take out not one book, but a number of books, kids' books, uh, and we'd read them all, and 1 week later go back and take another pile home. So, um, as a kid, I remember a librarian. The first time a librarian asked me what kind of books I liked, because I had never really thought about that. And I remember telling her I like books about people. And she said, well, okay, I mean, can you be a little more specific? Um, and what I remember the answer, because I had to really think about it. Um, I was interested in what people felt inside, what they experienced, what who they really were, and not what they looked like on the outside. I wasn't that interested in what they did, except as an expression of who they really were. Like pure plot didn't interest me. Things that happened to them and how they responded to the things that happened to them. And I would say probably that that's not so different than what I look for in a book today, actually. Yeah.
Love that. On the opposite side of that, now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I can't say I follow a series, and I'm not sure I'm loyal to authors I love. Um, that I would really say, get myself notified when they put out a new book, and so I would run to buy it. Although I certainly hope my readers do that for me. Oh, a new book by Nora Gold. Um, but for example, this Thomas Mann book that I don't know how it popped up. It popped up somewhere. I must have seen it reviewed somewhere or heard about it somewhere. And I love Thomas Mann, but I've always struggled with Thomas Mann, like so many people. And this book promised to show me a different Thomas Mann, like someone who was actually very funny and warm and not so stiff as most of the translations made him. So I ran out to get it, and it proved to be true. So I guess I twig onto an author that I love when anything touches on them, but I don't really follow a series in that way. Maybe I should be.
Love that. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
Oh, that's a great question too. Um, I think I would tell them to read for pleasure, to follow their heart, to read only what really turns them on. I mean, I don't think reading, unless you're reading for work, you have to read manuals, or if you're an academic, as I once was, you have to read, X amount of things. But I don't, this is going to sound funny, there shouldn't be any shoulds. I mean, when you're reading for pleasure, you should really just read what you enjoy. Um, and if you're not enjoying a book, and it's funny, it took me years to figure this out, you don't have to finish a book that you're finding boring. You can put it down. You're not a child who has to finish everything on their plate, Um, and I discovered this also not that long ago. I was at a film festival, and the person I was with said, if we're bored, we can walk out. And I said, well, you can't really walk out in the middle of a film. And it's like, no, you sit on the aisle so you're not disturbing everyone. And of course you can walk out. And it's incredibly liberating, to think this way. I don't know why most people feel, well, if I start a book, I have to finish it, because in a way that's a deterrent from reading, because, oh my God, I'm stuck with this thing even if I hate it. So I would tell people to really follow your heart and read what you enjoy. The second you're not, well, not the second. I mean, if you don't like the first paragraph, you should give the book a bit of a chance. But ultimately, if you're bored, stop reading and find something else to read. You know?
Love that. On the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
I would tell them to persevere. I think that many writers starting out, they may have talent and passion and creativity, but they often don't understand that writing is a business. There is a business of writing, which someone like me resisted for years. No, 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 it's a vocation. It's, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that if you want to publish your books, publisher, you have to find a publisher. You can self-publish, of course. But if you want a publisher, you're going to have to deal with a great deal of rejection. It's just part of the game. And most writers tend to be sensitive people, and it's very painful. But I would say that if you if you want to be a writer, you have to grow a thick skin. You have to figure out a way to deal with the rejection, which is just part of the game. I don't think it's 1 in a million people who write a book and their first, they send it out and it's taken right away. That's just not realistic. That's just not what it's like to be a writer. So it's really essential to manage those emotions and those experiences in a certain way. But equally essential is just not to give up, to just keep at it, because it's a game to some extent. It's a perseverance game. And a funny parallel I just thought of, like when I was doing my doctorate, we had a meeting with the people who were a year ahead of us. And I remember saying, like, how am I going to get through this? It's 5 years. It's just so overwhelming. And someone said, no, no, no. They had done research and seen who flunked out and who didn't. And the ones who made it to the end weren't even the smartest ones. They were the ones who just hung in. And it's the same thing with writing. You just hang in. You do it every day. It's not something you wait for inspiration for. Like any other work or any other important task in life, you use your self-discipline and you work hard and you persevere. And I think that's something that most beginning writers don't hear often enough.
Love that. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
People are generally surprised to know that I love to dance. Sometimes people think about me as a very serious person, and I certainly have serious interests and concerns and issues, and I care about the world and all that. But I love to have a good time. I love to dance. Um, and as I mentioned, I'm also a social activist. I love to work on important projects with people. I care a lot about social justice. I started a bunch of organizations with other people. The image people sometimes have of a writer, alone in your room and a recluse, is totally not me. So, yeah.
Love that. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
Well, just that I feel very, very lucky, Courtney. I think the number of people in the world, or the percentage get to do what they really want to do or what they feel they were born to do, is a very, very small and very lucky group. I remember reading a book by Tilly Olson called Silence. It's this incredible book about what it's like for creative, artistic people who don't get to do creative, artistic work because of their circumstances, economic or otherwise. And the pain of that. I mean, the agony of knowing that your life is spent going to and from a factory when really you want to be sitting writing or painting or composing music, whatever. So I don't take it at all for granted that I'm able to do what I want to do and what I love doing. I feel very fortunate and very blessed.
That. Where's the best place for readers to find your book? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option and the best place to connect with you?
Well, the best place to connect with me is through my website, www.noragold, NORAGOLD.com. I don't know about signed copies. I would, if anyone contacts me and wants a signed copy, I'd be happy to work that out. My books are on Amazon. My books are, I think, through Barnes and Noble. They're also sold through the websites of the publishers of the books, and all those details are on my website. So usually with a yes, and always with a button where you can purchase that book. So if anyone wants to read them, they're easy to find.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. That way everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you.